Talk City, a weekly podcast, features interviews and events happening around town. Tune into Talk City Greensboro every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, and download the podcast from SoundCloud. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Talk City Greensboro. It's an easy way to stay in the know while you're on the go and keep up with what's going on in Greensboro city government. I'm your host, Josh Johnson, and as always with me at the control board is the man, Devin Smith.
The man, the myth, and can I call myself a legend?
No, you're not old enough to be a legend. You are headed in the right direction, sir. Let me tell you that.
Well, this is the second episode of Season 2 of year 2019 for the podcast, and we are following a theme this month.
For those of you who want to binge.
Yes, Parks and Rec. So we invited a familiar name to the podcast this week. Stepping away from the CMO this week today is Chris Wilson, Assistant City Manager. So,
welcome, Chris.
Yes.
Thanks. I actually thought I was here reading for the Ron Burgundy podcast, so I'll do my best.
Okay, I think that's a couple studios down.
Yeah.
Hang with us,
All
and
right,
we'll be sure you get in there.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so let's just go ahead with the questions.
Little Sebastian.
Yeah. All right. So we know that you have several departments under your direction, but how are you involved with Parks and Rec currently?
Well, so I certainly work with Parks and Rec, but I am a Parks and Rec person. I live it. I have worked in it. I am all about Parks and Rec, and I am currently reading for the part of Ron Swanson in the live theater production of Parks and Rec. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll just grow my mustache back. But essentially, I spent many, many years in Parks and Recreation. I worked everything from monitoring natural resources to programming to administration, athletics, you name it. Loved every minute of it, still love it to this day. And I'm very proud of the Parks and Recreation we have here in Greensboro. It's one of the best in the country, and I'm not just saying that. It literally is recognized as one of the best in the country. So, I'm just excited to be even associated with it. We have such a great team over there.
And that was going to kind of, I guess you led us into our second question. Sure. Because you started, when you came to the city of Greensboro, you started in Parks and Rec, right?
Right. That was in 1933. And I was the first director. I rode a horse at that time. I actually have been with the city for 27 years, and I started in Parks and Recreation. So when I was a teenager, I played basketball. That was my primary sport. I was not the greatest kid in the world, and I got in a wee bit of trouble here and there. And my parents were desperate to try to get me back on track. And I was introduced to the game of tennis.
Oh, okay.
Tennis.
Now, I am originally from the Mecca of Asheboro, North Carolina.
Oh.
Okay.
And tennis was certainly there, but not as popular as, basketball, football, and baseball. So when I was asked if I wanted to try tennis, I was a little perplexed by the notion of what it was. And my stepfather, of all people, had taught tennis on the side, and he said, I'll teach you. So he handed me a wooden Jimmy Connors racket that was warped. It was literally warped.
He took it out of the satchel of his horse.
It was literally like it was bent, and he was like, "Here, let's just hit around." And he said, "Your footwork is really good." I was a decent athlete. I wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination, and I kind of took to it, and I ended up making the high school team. I certainly wasn't the best out there, and certainly wasn't the best behaved. I think I started maybe the first ever fight on a tennis team during a tennis match ever, and got kicked off the bus when we traveled a couple of times. And
you were like the McEnroe of Asheboro.
I was. Well, that was actually so. At some point, we moved up to Greensboro, and that's where I started playing tennis. Was in Greensboro at Northwest Viking Country High School. And our tennis court was right next to a pasture at that time. That school has grown tremendously since then, but at that time, it was not in a developed area, so it was interesting. And one summer, I needed money in order to, do the things that one does at that age. And there was a job working in Parks and Rec as a tennis instructor. And I was like, what the heck? I can do that.
Yeah.
And it was actually harder than I thought it was going to be because it was not just instructing, it was also court maintenance and all sorts of good things. But that was my first introduction to Parks and Recreation. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved working with kids. I loved working with people. And the people that I worked with were truly appreciative of learning how to do it. And some people were just doing it to exercise. So I took to it. I took an interest in everything around me. And that was sort of my intro. And I ended up working in several places, as time went on. That's the Reader's Digest version. Mm-hmm. But I started out in tennis part-time and then, ended up... I left the city for 3 months one time in that 27-year span. So one summer, the tennis program was contracted out, and we had an option to either go with the contractor or work with the city at another location. I was young and full of courage, and I said, I can do this anywhere. So I went and found a neighborhood that I thought could, pay me well, and they didn't have a tennis pro yet. I said, let me do your program. They let me do the program. Worked in the private sector for 3 months, made a ton of money, blew every penny of it, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it because the exchange between myself and the person taking the lesson was a different feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was when I discovered I really like working in the public sector. So I called my old boss, and she said, well, I don't really have much at this time. I was like, I'll do anything. And she said, can you run a cash register? I said, maybe. I know how to handle money, in some respects. I got hired out at Burmill Park. And the funny part about Burmill Park was that was the facility that was that launched my whole decision to go into public service. So, and that's where I really turned it on. I loved the fact that facility was public, and I wanted to just get every person in Guilford County inside that facility. And we went, I had a great team over there. We worked our butts off, and I literally worked in every job that we had there. Ended up managing that facility, which was one of my proudest moments. But we went from less than 100,000 visits a year to over 800,000 visits a year when I left. And my team, was just tremendous and awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a cool journey. And then from there, went through and eventually became Parks and Rec director, and then got the call to the manager's office, and that was actually based on quality of life services. I'm a huge advocate for that, and very proud of what the city offers.
We got a professional as our interviewee today. He's
Yes.
already talked about this question, but, we can kind of address it a little bit more. But, why Parks and Recreation is so important in a community like Greensboro. And I think you just, before we did the commercial break, hit on one of the big ones, which is making it accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
I had to admit, I was slurping coffee while you guys were doing the ads, so my coffee slurping comes through. Forgive me. I may do that intentionally now as I talk. Let's do one. Did you hear that?
Very nice.
All right. I've been drinking coffee since I was 13, so, I can't give it up at this point. Why Parks and Rec in Greensboro? Well, so Greensboro is unique in many ways. I mean, we have just this awesome history of changing the world. We have a central location to the state, one of the best states to live in and locate. And Greensboro sort of exemplifies all things, but one of the great attributes about Greensboro is we have these terrific natural resources. You could go to our lakes or our award-winning gardens or our parks, and most all of those facilities are within a walking distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's incredible. You can't go to every community and have that access. So, parks and recreation in general are many things to many people, and I try not to define those things because what's recreation to you or what's leisure to you is different than,
Sure.
For me, every weekend I'm out in the woods somewhere and I'm getting next to water or climbing something or doing something crazy. Yeah. And for you, that may be different. It may be sitting and reading in a park or doing something else. But Greensboro has something for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you can do whatever you want. I was at a neighborhood park the other day and I saw people playing, is it Quidditch? It's like
Oh,
a Harry
Quidditch.
Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they were riding some broomsticks and
Yeah, man.
I mean, I had no idea.
It's cutthroat.
Well, it looked like it. Yeah, I mean, I
don't
saw
mess
a lot
around
of
at Quidditch,
tripping.
man.
It's pretty
They've got
competitive.
nothing on hockey. There was a lot of elbows thrown.
Yeah.
Interesting outfits. It was great. And I thought, that's terrific. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see all sorts of things. I've seen people dress up in medieval period costumes and reenact and just you name it. Like, it's so good. We have great weather here.
Yeah.
Lots of pollen to go with it. It's a hazard that you have to deal with. But we've just got such a beautiful place. We have so many beautiful trees and so many things that we can be proud of. And, one of my favorite things to do is go, hit one of our trails or go to the lakes on the weekend. We have beautiful lakes. And,
we do.
Yeah.
I love to stand up paddleboard and do things like that. So, Greensboro's just very, very fortunate. And I guess what's even better about that is for my 27 years, our elected officials and our community stands behind that product. I mean,
Yeah.
that is important.
Oh, yeah,
that is
it
one
is.
of our identifiers. So, Greensboro's it is on the map. So I taught for 3 years at the university level. And do you know Greensboro is literally in textbooks for some of the unique things that it does in Parks and Recreation?
I can believe it.
Yeah, it's not surprising, but
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Fayetteville, which is, it's not the worst place to live. But when I came
No,
up
no.
here to go to school, I was thoroughly impressed and shocked about, because I was like, Greensboro, and then I was like, it's literally green here everywhere. I mean,
It is.
there's trees, there's
Well,
parks.
green and yellow. But yes, right and yellow. Thanks to the pollen, right?
But I mean, there's parks. You can, being on A&T's campus, there's 2 parks
There is, yeah.
just literally in walking distance for a college student who most likely doesn't have a car when they first get here.
Definitely not.
So
is
yes,
important.
and then with us growing up, then
Yeah.
it's crazy. I still haven't walked every mile of the Greenway and stuff like that, and I've been here for almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
Well, shame on you. Frankly, just shame on you. Nah, we have over 100 miles of trail. It's so awesome. I mean, you've got so many options here. I love Greensboro. I technically was born in Greensboro because it wasn't a great thing to be born in a hospital in a smaller town. So I may have grown up in Asheboro, but moving here to Greensboro was the biggest and best thing that ever happened to me. And I just fell in love with this community. And one of the great things about it was all the great parks and your gardens. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
they're just gorgeous. It's insane. And I've traveled, certainly all over the world, and I would put this up against any place I've ever been. And I've been to some phenomenal places. Wow. And I will just say, Fayetteville is a wonderful place. I'm trying to keep employment opportunities open here. I don't want anybody to think that we're squelching on Fayetteville. I love Fayetteville. It's a great place.
It's just not Greensboro.
Well, no. Greensboro's the best. It really is.
Yeah.
So we don't have much time, but I do want to get this this question in. Battleground Parks District is a very big thing. It's coming alive, and I mean, we're seeing it take shape. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with that project.
Yeah, so talk about unique. Battleground Parks District is so unique. It is a federal, nonprofit, city-county relationship.
Yeah.
And from what we have researched, there is nothing like it in the country. So everybody locally knows the Science Center. Across the state, we now know that everybody knows the Science Center.
Yeah.
It's in the top 12 tourist attractions and growing. Inland Aquarium, Zoo, Museum, and so much more getting ready to happen. We are literally getting ready to expand again. The carousel that is being built right beside it is the largest in the state. We believe maybe the Southeast. It will be phenomenal. We are beginning phase 1 of Battleground Parks District, which will be that surrounding area. I don't want to spoil it, but I will just say the experiences associated with phase 1 will be like anything else you can do in Greensboro. That facility, that tract of 400 acres, is everything from sports to, passive recreation, the pedal boats, the science center, the history at the Revolutionary War site. And by the way, that's the first of its kind in the country. I don't know how many people
Really?
know that.
Yeah.
So it's not the first national park, but it is the first national park that celebrated a Revolutionary War battle. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
That is cool.
With the Guilford Courthouse.
Yes.
I love the courthouse.
Yes.
Yeah, and it widely popular facility. So I will just say this: the future is bright for that. It is going to be a destination. Urban Loop lets out right there, right?
Yeah.
A&Y Trail lets out right there. Perfectly positioned. We have huge plans for this facility, but I'm just going to give you a scope real quick. The national park, 400,000 or 500,000 visits a year. Science Center, 400,000 or 500,000 visits a year. Country Park sees over 800,000 visits a year.
I love Country Park.
Yes, I do too.
That's
It's
one of the pieces of the Parks and Rec that I have walked many times.
good. Well, that's good to hear. You know, that's one of our first major facilities in Greensboro. It's been loved to death and continuing to transform all the time. But if you take just those numbers, and that doesn't include JC and Spencer Love and all, you're already over 1 million visits, right?
Yep.
We see that being much, much bigger by the time we finish. So we will have the largest clay court tennis facility in the Southeast. We will have a top 5 tourist attraction in the Science Center, largest carousel in the Southeast. I can keep going. We're talking millions right here in Greensboro. It's awesome.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Can't wait. It's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah,
me too.
I definitely.
I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, as well as I.
Well, Chris, we want to thank you for coming down and sharing all these stories.
Yeah,
and
we'll get to that Beyonce question when we have more time.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought this was hot seat. And I was expecting a question about Ron Swanson, Leslie Knope, and I was going to say Little Sebastian. I had everything written out here. I'm disappointed I couldn't.
So
use that
sorry to throw
material.
you a curveball.
Yeah,
that's fine.
That's all right.
this was a normal interview. Sorry you weren't
Yeah,
prepared for that
I
one.
don't do those, especially before my 6th cup of coffee.
Well, before we end the show, we do want to let everyone know that videos of the podcast will be released at the end of the month. So if you're listening to this and then you catch all the podcasts from Parks and Rec for May, at the end of May, you will get to see all of these podcasts, and maybe that will... You get to binge the videos.
Yeah, and maybe after seeing us, you hopefully will come back.
Yes,
Come
definitely.
right here. Okay, I didn't know that. Why didn't you tell me?
Oh, no, you look fine.
All right, folks. Well, stay tuned in weekly by subscribing to Talk City Greensboro on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. And don't forget, you can download Talk City from SoundCloud.
Well, that's all we have for this week. Thank you for tuning in to Talk City. Be sure to watch GTN, your official source for news and information from the city of Greensboro. GTN is also available on Spectrum Channel 13,
AT&T Uverse Channel 99.
North State Channel 31,
GTN also streams live on the city's website at
greensboro-nc.gov.
Chris, thanks for coming. Sorry, we appreciate it. It was an honor to have
I love hanging out
Yes.
with you guys. Thanks.
you. Thanks, everybody.